Welcome to TAMA Talks, brought to you by the Torrance Art Museum Advocates. I'm Janine Madden, current TAMA president, and I'd like to thank you for watching. Today, we will be discussing work which is currently on view in the main gallery at the Torrance Art Museum in a show called Studio System, an Experimental Residency Project. The Studio System Project is a unique attempt to bridge the gap between artistic practice and the public. First held in 2015, Studio System seeks to bring the dynamism of the artist studio into the museum space, encouraging audiences to not only see works as they are in progress, but to interact with the artist to discuss inspirations, sources, thoughts, feelings, content, and context, as well as chart the progression of the works over the month-long period that the project encompasses. This exhibition is on view through this Saturday, June 29th, and culminates in a closing reception Saturday night from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the museum. The reception is open to the public, and we invite you to attend. The Torrance Art Museum is located at 3320 Civic Center Drive in Torrance, California, and is opened Tuesday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Admission is free, and donations are gratefully accepted. This discussion is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel with all of our previous TAMA Talks. You can access it from our website, www.tamadvocates.com. Joining us today is Studio System resident artist Jacqueline Valenzuela. Jacqueline received her BFA in drawing and painting from Cal State Long Beach in 2019 and is currently earning her MFA in drawing and painting from UCLA. Her work has been exhibited nationally and has been highlighted in both online and printed publications, including LAist, Remezcla, a special reissue of Lowrider Magazine, Juxtapoz and Gata Magazine. In the fall of 2024, Jacqueline will have her debut museum solo exhibition, Con Safos, con Fuerzas, at the Bakersfield Museum of Art. Her practice expands beyond an exhibition career into the curator sector. One of her curatorial projects, Meet Me at the Boulevard, is currently on display at Altura LA. An ongoing project of hers is coming up on its third iteration, LA to Essay, which has been a collaborative exchange between Los Angeles and San Antonio artists and galleries. In the winter of 2025, she will be partnering with her representative gallery, Munzon Gallery and Presa House to bring together a group of 20 artists. Valenzuela is an interdisciplinary artist whose practice is centered around depicting her personal experience, as well as the storytelling of other women who, like her, are in the Chicano world of lowriding. Her art practice reflects the deep roots she has planted in the lowrider community by bridging the gap between fine art and this underrepresented community. So welcome, Jacqueline. We're so very pleased that you're here today and that you can discuss the work that you have currently on view and Studio System. And with a week to go, we're hoping is it pretty close to being done, or is there still work to do?
There's definitely still work to do. I think I made amends with the idea that the residency is so experimental that I'm not going to, I guess, reach the finish line with all the work. But I think that's what's so great about the experience is you're actively creating and you get to interact with the public, and you also get to interact with other artists. So I think I'm enjoying more the actual studio environment as opposed to working towards finishing a specific painting, or so it's been refreshing, I think.
Good. Yeah, I feel like it's very experiential in addition to being experimental. So we're kind enough to send some images of your work. So I am going to see if I can bring those up and have you tell us a little bit about them.
So this is Jelly Bean Slots. It's an older painting that I think is kind of representative of the type of work that I'm creating currently at the Torrance Art Museum. I'm basically referencing images of photos that I've taken while being in the automotive setting. My regular studio is actually at an auto body shop.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I have an office or kind of like a studio space that's built inside this warehouse, but the rest of the warehouse doubles as an auto body shop.
Wow.
So it's interesting because I feel like low riding has become all encompassing in my art practice and in my personal life. So there's images, the images that I'm referencing are things that are representative of that experience. Jelly Bean Slots specifically shows these rims that they're actually called jelly bean rims because of the little jelly bean shape.
Right.
Yeah. But I remember my partner had just finished cleaning off these tires and rims because he was going to change them out on his El Camino.
Oh.
And I think I had been painting and I walked out and I saw them just like leaning against our exterior wall of the studio space. And I just really liked the shadows that were like happening within this small composition that I stumbled across. So I decided to photograph it, and then later on I painted it. So I feel like that's how I'm creating work right now, is that I'll see something that's immediately in my surrounding area and I'll just be drawn to it and I feel the need to paint it. And they're not always like super personal, deep, I guess, like painting. Sometimes it just has to do more with something that I find aesthetically pleasing.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of the work that I'm working on at the Torrance Art Museum is similar in that way, where it's something that I just stumbled across in my vicinity and I'm like, oh, I want to paint that. And now I am. So it's been really fun.
Wonderful. Wonderful. All right. Let's see if I can successfully navigate through this piece. Okay, great.
So this is another example in the cut, similar to Jelly Bean Slots, where this isn't actually at my personal studio space. I went to go get my nails done with my friend. But her old nail studio that she had was right next to a tire shop. And I remember I got out of my car and they had this like really just, it was like a degrading or like a mural that had just deteriorated. Oh my
Okay,
God.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Over time. And it was just a bunch of tires and it had like obviously it had a saying, but also the area that it's in, there's a ton of graffiti over it. So just how the mural itself looked was so interesting to me that I wanted to paint it. So I laugh. I remember I got out of my car, I snapped a quick photo, and it was in my photo album forever. And then finally I was thinking, oh, what should I paint? And I stumbled across this and I was like, oh, that might be something interesting to paint. I had a lot of fun with this painting because I used materials I wouldn't typically use. I feel like that's a common theme in my art practice now. I did spend 3 years where I was painting in the automotive industry, painting murals on lowriders. So when I went back to my regular practice, I felt almost uncomfortable only using oil on canvas. So I did in the cut, I used a paint marker to build up some of the graffiti. I used airbrush, which was really fun. Even to kind of mimic this like cinder block wall, I used pumice. And then I did airbrush over it to kind of make the wall look a little bit worn down. So it's just, I feel like I'm finding ways to use different materials that I wouldn't typically use.
Absolutely.
It's exciting.
Did you mix the pumice with the paint and then applied it and then airbrushed over it?
Yes. So just the slightest amount. I used I believe it's by like can't even remember the brand, but my friend had given it to me because she was like, oh, I saw you're using a lot of different like mediums and stuff with your work, so maybe you'd be interested in this. And as
Okay.
soon as I opened the jar, I was like, oh my God, this kind of looks like the surface of a cinder block. So once I had already picked this composition, I'm like, oh, that's perfect. It's like perfect experimental kind of like type of thing that I can try out. And it was super fun. It was a little bit hard to apply it to the surface at first. I think it has to do with it being on canvas. So if I were to do this again, I would definitely do it on a wooden panel, just
Mhm.
so I would have an easier time applying it.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that's what's so fun. You get to use different materials, and I think you're figuring out yourself what works and what doesn't work. So it's always interesting. And I think that's what's so fun about being an artist. You can constantly experiment and try things out. Some things work, some things don't, and everything's just like constant learning, I would say.
Yeah, that's life that you just described. So, okay.
So when the rooster crows, this painting is actually all automotive paint.
Oh,
Um, yeah, super fun. It sucks because of the material usage, I can't exactly do this at the Torrance Art Museum.
okay.
Um, because obviously the paint is very, it has a lot of chemicals. It's something that has to be sprayed in a confined space, preferably actual paint booth.
Okay.
But yeah, this is just an example of the type of work that I was doing when I was painting lowriders. So this mural kind of approach, but merging it with more of an abstract background that would be more common in a lowrider paint job. I had a lot of fun doing this painting. It's really cool because there's elements that you can get in automotive paint that you can't necessarily get in, I would say, oil on canvas. One of the main things is that sparkly, like iridescent that comes through
Here,
from
yeah.
the lowrider. Yeah, it's somewhat visible right there in the painting, but even in the mural, like the rooster, a lot of the green feathers actually have little iridescent paint swatches that I used in there. So they glimmer in the sun. Um, so it's cool to play with those materials and figure out, I guess, how to translate something that is a realistic painting, but using these types of materials and figuring out what works, what doesn't. I really love this painting. It's actually of a rooster that belonged to my family.
Oh, wow. That's so
Yeah,
cool. And there's
yeah,
there's candy in it?
yes, candy paint. It's a type of paint like an automotive paint, but
Okay.
it's,
Okay.
yeah. So candy, I would relate it to glazes in oil paint,
Oh,
where
okay.
you,
Okay.
yeah, you know how with the oil paint, when you're creating a glaze, you use a medium to make the paint like translucent and almost like tint the medium. So that's how candy paint functions as well. What you would do to paint something like this is you paint a base coat of flake. So that's a bunch of tiny metallic like pieces, and
Okay.
they're,
Okay.
you shoot them out of this paint gun, and then you do the candy paint over that, so it's the translucent paint. And the more that you layer it on top of each other, you can add depth or have things that are very translucent and see-through. It's a really cool material to work with. Definitely difficult at first, but once you get a hang of it, it's a breeze.
And you're saying that these are the same kinds of paints that you would paint on cars.
Yes, yes, except on with this painting in particular, it was done on a wooden panel. So you can use those materials on wooden panels. You just have to prep the surface a specific way.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yes. So no one remembers a paper plate. This is a painting that I made I believe it was a year ago now, but this is something that's representative of the type of, I guess, approach that's also being used in my current body of work at the Torrance Art Museum, where I'm taking zoomed in shots of cars or things that are specific to the lowrider community, but then I want to frame them with, I think of them almost as deconstructed lowriders. They're like assemblage style frames.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm using elements of the actual interiors of lowrider cars to frame the paintings.
Ah,
Um,
okay. Okay,
yeah. So
cool.
sometimes the work, the exterior materials are actual materials used in that specific car. And sometimes the car isn't completed. So what I'll do is, using the colors that are in the painting, I pick and choose materials that are representative of that existing composition so that it's all complementing each other once the painting is complete and framed. These frames are something that I really want to do for the current body of work that I have at the Torrance Art Museum. But because of the limited, it's a month long, so I'm also trying to be aware of how much time I actually have to create.
Yes.
But these types of frames are very fun for me to make. I think it's almost like a breather from painting because obviously when you're creating, you're still using your hands, but it's nice to not have to paint. And I think it feels almost more like a craft or something that I'm doing for fun, as opposed to creating a very serious fine art piece.
Sure.
Yeah, these are the types of things that I'm very drawn to and that I'm using also in the work at the Torrance Art Museum.
Fantastic. Wow. So that's faux fur on the interior of it. Okay.
Yes. And I think I bought that from Joann's.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
The fur is something that is used typically on the dashes of these lowriders. So I thought it would just be interesting to bring those materials into the painting like side, but I am still troubleshooting. I feel like it might be interesting to maybe cut out some of the fur and put it on the actual surface of the painting, possibly in those little pixels where I'm creating almost paint swatches. So I feel like it's something that I'm experimenting with, but that's gonna continue to evolve and maybe redefine itself over time.
And I think that's also something other artists who have joined us have mentioned too, is that the experience of this experimental aspect of the residency is going to affect them well past, usually you have a show, you put your work up, you move on to the next show. But where this one, you actually got to experience the act of making the finished product, if you will, or the piece in the museum. It sounds like you're going to be incorporating some of the I don't even know if you want to call them risks, but those extensions of your imagination that took place while you were creating this work for the show. So
Yes, definitely. And I agree with what you said. I've spoken to a couple of the other artists, and I feel like we're all in the similar kind of state of mind. Some people do have work that's more finished and ready to display, and a lot of us are, I think, just enjoying the actual making process, the creative end of it, and we're not really working towards a finish line. We're more just, I think it's interesting to converse with the public or with the other artists because sometimes they set off an idea that you maybe didn't even have in mind. It almost feels like a never ending critique class, like an art class almost, where
yeah,
you're setting up your work and you're getting critique from your peers. But it's refreshing because sometimes it'll be from someone that you're working alongside, and other times it's just a stranger that sees your work and they gravitate towards it.
yes.
So it's been great. I think offers itself to be a very social experience for the artist, and I think that's really just great overall, honestly, for the creative process.
Good, good. I'm so far everybody has really echoed what you've said, in that the addition of the public and that input has really made a difference in um, not only the work itself, but the perspective of it, to say, okay, well, you're seeing something that I didn't see, or, that, and it's kind of that mutual appreciation piece.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, here's another one with the fur. I like them.
Yeah. This one is named Blue Inferno. Again, something that's very influential in the current like body of work that I'm working on. This is actually a car that my partner painted in the auto body shop studio that we have together. And it's a car that belongs to my friend. So again, a lot of experimenting with materials that I see in car builds sometimes, but haven't really worked with firsthand. And I think that's what's so cool about this approach, where it always feels like a refreshing experience. This piece is actually currently on view at the John Wayne Airport in OC. So it's really
Wow, that's
cool.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
so cool. I love that iridescent chiffon.
Oh yeah, that was so difficult to make.
Yeah.
I bought the material, the fabric, I saw it and I was like, oh my God, this reminds me of the actual paint job on the car. So I knew I wanted to use it.
Okay.
Um, but I had to somehow wrap it around these 3D foam flames that I had cut out. The flames actually kept breaking at different points and I had to piece them all back together. It was very stressful, I would say. At one point I was like, why am I making this? But the car has flames on it, so I thought it would be a cool kind of just thing to add in there. And then wrapping it with the chiffon, I remember I was struggling because I had to use like a fabric adhesive, but
Oh,
I hadn't really used that before, so it was difficult. But once I started to lay certain little areas down, it did give me a sense of like, oh, okay, I'm doing this correctly. It took a lot of pins to put together, I'll say that much.
wow. Okay. And I think, okay, yes.
Yes, this is En Tu Recuerdo. It's actually on view right now at Art Share LA in downtown, in the Arts District. But also kind of playing with that whole deconstructed assemblage style frame, taking elements of actual car builds. So this white interior, white fur, faux fur, it's not actually a part of the actual car build. My friend owns this car. It's a Corvair. Every Dia de los Muertos, she's from Santa Ana. So every Dia de los Muertos, they have this huge car show in downtown Santa Ana. And she sets it up with a ton of marigolds.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
yes, and they're pouring out from under her hood and also from around her car. And I remember the first time she did this installation, I thought it was just so beautiful, especially because her car is like this apple red. And with the marigold orange, it just looks, the colors were just working really well.
Yes.
So I remember I asked her, I'm like, can I please paint your car? Like, this is perfect. And I'm really happy with this painting. I thought it was cool because she has these fuzzy dice in her car, so I added those into the frame. Just, I think, really having fun with different materials and seeing what I can work with and maybe what's a little bit more difficult to work with. The jeweled fringe was really fun to play with too, because the jewels are very iridescent as well.
Around
Yes.
the edge here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Even the red pom-poms around the little painting, she actually has those in her car. So I thought it would be cool to add them around the frame of the little painting of the car.
I see them here. Yes. Okay. Wow. That's so good. I love the dice. And I love a Corvair. So that's even
Oh
better.
yeah.
Very nice. All right. And this is the last piece. Tell us a little bit about this piece. There's just a lot. I love the gold leaf. There's just a lot going on.
Thank you. Yeah, this piece is, I think, right up there with the idea of me combining skill sets that I learned from the automotive industry with my academic training from going to art school. So I did this kind of off-centered shot of the cover of a magazine that I was featured in. So Image LA, it's an offshoot from LA Times where they have a magazine specific to creatives in the LA area.
Oh,
And they had covered a story on car clubs and specifically plaques. So all cars that are in car clubs have car club plaques that are gold and they hang in the back end of their car. They're displayed and it shows just what type of just the people that they're hanging around with and stuff like that. It's really, I think it's almost like a marker, like, oh, okay, they're from that car club.
sure. Sure.
And the person that made my car club plaque actually is holding the plaque, and they photographed him holding it up in the air, and they made it the cover. We didn't think we would make the cover, so it was just a kind of like a funny thing where I was like, oh wow, we're on the cover, okay.
That's
So
cool.
when, yeah, we got the magazine in the mail, and it just looked really cool. And I remember I wanted to post it on social media, so I took a photo of the magazine on top of my lowrider. So the abstract elements behind the magazine are actually the roof of my car that is all custom painted. So when I took this image, I just really liked the composition. Eventually I painted it here and read all about it. And elements of the abstracts, kind of like lowrider paint job in the background.
Mhm.
I did do actual automotive paint in some of the things, but more with, I did it with aerosol because again, it's on canvas. So if I were to put the actual automotive paint, it would eat away at the canvas. So I did use aerosol elements instead. The gold leaf is obvious there, sandwiched between the pink and those purples. It's really shiny when you see it in person, which I love.
Right in here.
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
Yes.
And so this is indicative too of the work that you have at the TAM. Is your
Yes.
work very similar to what this work is at the TAM?
Yes, where I'm adding pixels in and doing these kind of automotive tips and tricks, but figuring out a way to do them with oil paint or aerosol as opposed to actual automotive paint. I feel like all the work are snapshots of my actual personal life. I have right now at the Torrance Art Museum, I believe I have 4 pieces in progress.
Okay, good. Okay.
Yes, and they're all varying. 2 actually depict my partner. So one is my fiance, and his legs are hanging out of his car. And I just thought it was so interesting because I remember, again, he had a long day painting or working on a car. And I came out of my studio and I saw his legs just hanging out of his car. And I was thinking, what is he doing? He was laying in his car with the car door open.
Mhm.
And it was just so interesting to me. So I'm painting a painting of that. Then there's a painting of him sitting in his car with one of our dogs. We have 3 foster dogs. They're always in our studio with us. So again, I think it's indicative of my actual personal life, but also my professional life. And it's funny how art can show all these personal or intimate, I guess, like moments, but you're sharing it with the public.
Yeah, absolutely though. I mean, I think that melding is really what turns it into a piece that is very personal to you. Like all of the different images that we shared today all have some sort of a personal meaning to you.
Yes.
And I think those pieces, I'm sure they're probably hard to let go. You
Oh,
know?
yes.
Yeah.
I have one huge painting that I think is like 54 inches by 60 inches. And it was a very personal painting. And I remember I had it on display at a museum, and the gallery that was showing it had it for sale. And as soon as I let them have it for sale, I instantly regretted it. And as soon as I got the painting back, I'm like, oh no, I can't sell this one.
Yeah.
There's a few that I think aren't as personal, so it doesn't feel as difficult, but the very personal or intimate ones, sometimes I think as an artist, you second guess yourself. You're like, well, should I, or should I maybe keep it? And I mean, it's always a back and forth, but I
Yeah.
think all artists, you're exposing intimate moments of your personal life with the public, and you just have to feel comfortable with that, and
Yeah.
sometimes with letting go of them.
No, you're right. You're right. That I would think particularly work that takes a long time to complete,
Mhm.
or a work that maybe has some elements that you've never incorporated before, like, where you're the first time you used pumice, or sometimes the first couple of ones, you're like, okay, yeah, I can let those go. And then when you get better at it, you're like, okay, these are really quality and I want to hold on to them. But
Yeah.
we have a little bit of time, and I know this is going to sound horribly crazy, but can you give us just a short like introduction to what the lowrider community is, and how you got involved in it, and how you got involved in painting cars? Because I think that's such a it's just a unique way to explore your own um self,
Yeah.
through the work that you do, and to do it on vehicles. I think it's also something that we really just take for granted. And so, um, yeah, just tell us a little bit about it, particularly about the lowrider community. It's fascinating, actually.
Yeah. So the lowrider community, to me, it's more almost like a second family. Um, I mean, you get to meet people that are building their car just how you are. And it's always exciting to see them continue to do these customizations on their car builds while you're doing it simultaneously as well. It's very much community based. And I think it's so interesting that it just revolves around an art adjacent creative kind of thing.
Yes.
um, I remember when I saw the first few lowriders that I saw, it was growing up right off of Whittier Boulevard. So I grew up in Whittier from the time that I was 3 to my early adult years. But I always saw lowriders, and every Sunday, it never failed. You would see a car driving down the boulevard. Whittier Boulevard is actually considered one of the birthplaces of lowriding, specifically cruising, Sundays, just I think any weekday, you'll at least run into one lowrider car on Whittier Boulevard. I actually own a 1975 Cadillac Eldorado.
Oh,
Her
wow.
name, yeah, her
Wow.
name is her name is La Playgirl. It's all Playboy themed. I think it's hilarious because my car is hot pink. I actually grew up very tomboyish and hated pink, and now I have a bright pink car, which is so obnoxious, and I love it.
Well,
But
good. How often do you get to go out?
right now I've been very busy with my career, so it's not too often. But I would say that summertime is the best time to go cruising. It never fails. You're gonna run into a car at some time, like at some point. Whether right now I feel like a lot of people are doing beach cruises, which is really cool.
Mhm.
So you might run into them at the beach, you might run into them just on your local boulevard or avenue. And it's always really fun to cruise. You get to, like I said, like build community with other car builders. And it's a very, I think, supportive environment. It is male dominated, which is intimidating. That's actually why I first started painting about the lowrider community. As a woman lowrider owner, I constantly would get comments about my car, but they always thought it belonged to my husband, or they're like, oh, that must be your husband's car, your boyfriend's car, your dad's car, your brother's car. And I was like, no, it's mine.
Yeah, and
So
to say you painted it too, I mean, I would think that
yeah,
once they see your work, do you find that a lot of your fellow drivers out there are asking you to paint their cars?
I have painted 3 car builds.
Oh, okay.
One one was super fun because it was an all women's car build. Another one was really cool because it was my first paint job I did by myself. So I was working with a professional skater at the time that owned a C10, and I painted his pickup truck for him. I did various murals around the body of the car, and that was super fun. And then my first paint job car build that I did was actually with my fiance. So we painted our first lowrider car together, and that was such a fun experience. It was very collaborative. Um, and I think it was a little bit, it was definitely a learning experience for both of us because it kind of just happened on a whim. one of his uh, one of his customers wanted hand painted murals. Murals on lowriders are typically airbrushed. So my fiance was like, well, uh, Jackie knows how to paint. Like maybe we can figure something out. And after a lot of troubleshooting, we actually figured out a way to like work with the paint, the automotive paint, in a way that I could actually brush it onto the surface of the car.
Oh,
And
wow. Oh my.
yeah, so
Well,
I
with
was
a
able,
brush, with a paintbrush.
yeah, because of that like discovery that we made after troubleshooting a lot, I was able to eventually paint that car and 2 other cars, and then plus my own car that I've been building for I think it's about 7 years now. It's so funny. People think, oh, you work on cars, you must have all the time in the world to paint your own car. And I'm like, no, it's like another job.
Right. And
But
then is the paint like, I would think there's a lot of like a polymer, like is it a very thick viscous paint?
it
Car
is.
paint? Yeah. So I would
It
think with
is.
a brush, that would be so, it'd be like painting with, I mean, I guess it is enamel at the end of the day. I mean, there's a lot of enamel quality to it. So,
We figured out a way to dilute it to a perfect um,
hmm,
kind of consistency where it makes it easier. But
okay.
it is, I think, an overwhelming process. But it was so fun to paint the cars because, like I said, it kind of gave me a whole different perspective on the lowrider community. And I realized how these cars are extensions of every single owner. So once I got into my regular art practice again, I kind of just hit the ground running and I was looking at skill sets that I gained from painting cars and photos I had taken while painting cars. And now I'm just pouring it all and merging it with my academic training. Very fun, very difficult.
Well, it's nice that you get to do what you love to do. I mean, I think for those rare few people who get to meld their work with what they love to do,
Yes.
then like you said, it's complicated and difficult and hard work, but it's worth it because it's really a nice melding of the two. So
Oh
lucky
yeah.
you.
No, I definitely agree. I think if I hadn't painted the cars, I maybe my art career would have gone in a different direction. Who knows? It was very influential to the art practice that I'm building now.
Sure, sure. Well, I'm going to advance to let me see if I can get there, to our last slide. And I just want to say thank you so very, very much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Just as a reminder, the Studio System Experimental Residency Project is still on view. This is the last week at the Torrance Art Museum. It's going to end, it will come down on Saturday. And Jacqueline was saying that you're not going to be at the closing, but you'll be there this week through Friday. So hopefully
Yes.
people can stop in and take a look at the images that you've created. Again, keeping in mind that when everybody came in at the beginning of the month, everything was blank. It was just blank canvases and blank walls. And if you've had the opportunity to come in during the whole month of June and see that progression, I think it's really awesome. And if not, then come in at the closing and get a chance to see what everything looks like when it's in its, where it is. It's whether it's going to be done or not. Not everybody is going to feel that it's finished, but at some point, like you said, there's just so much that goes into completing these or creating these pieces that they may never be done. So
Yes.
yeah. So thank you so much.
No, thank you.